I sat at the dining table for hours that evening, watching the roast chicken cool, the mashed potatoes form a thin, unappetizing crust, and the green beans lose their vibrant hue. The candles I had lit at 6 o'clock burned down to short, stubby wicks by the time I finally blew them out at 10. My 68th birthday had come and gone quietly, uncelebrated. I had spent days preparing, planning every detail. I cooked David's favorite honey, glazed chicken with rosemary, the one he always raved about, and Lisa's garlic mashed potatoes, just like she had loved as a child. I even splurged on that expensive Napa Valley wine David had raved about from his last trip with his wife. They had promised to come. David had texted me 2 weeks earlier. Wouldn't miss it, Mom. Amber's excited too. Lisa had said she'd be there as well. I believed them. At 6:15, I sent David a text. Dinner's ready whenever you are. By 6:30, I called Lisa. Voicemail. By 7, I called David. Hey, Mom can't talk right now. I'll call you back. He never did. By 8, I sent a group text. Is everything okay? I'm getting worried. At 8:45, I opened Instagram. Normally, I hardly used it except for seeing Sophie's art. But that night, I scrolled, searching for I don't know what, some sign that my children were alive, that nothing had happened to them. And then I saw a photo posted 30 minutes earlier. David and Lisa, dressed elegantly, champagne glasses raised, standing in a glamorous hotel ballroom. The caption reads something like, Portland Tech Gala with my favorite sister. Networking goals. Fair Tech Life 5 Family Goals A Portland events. They were fine, 7 miles away, celebrating and networking. And there I sat alone at a table set for 5. I didn't cry. That surprised me. Instead, I felt something else, something icy and precise, like water drawn from a deep well. It started in my chest and spread through my arms, down to my fingertips. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the table, untouched plates, wilted flowers, burned down candles. I didn't post it anywhere. I just needed proof, evidence that this had really happened. Then I walked to the kitchen and began packing the food into containers, methodically, quietly, like grading papers, one at a time, no emotion, just work to be done. My name is Margaret Chen, though everyone calls me Maggie. I taught high school English in Portland for 32 years and raised 2 children in this house on Alama Street in the Beaumont, Wilshire neighborhood. My husband, James, and I had been married 43 years before he died of a heart attack 3 years ago. And on my 68th birthday, I learned something I probably should have realized long ago. But I'm getting ahead of myself. James and I bought this house in 1982. A fixer-upper then, it was a 1/9 square, foot craftsman with solid bones but terrible everything else. We spent weekends sanding floors, painting walls, and replanting the garden. David was 5, Lisa 2. They grew up here, learning to ride bikes on this street and carving their names into the big oak in the backyard. James worked in accounting and was careful with money. We lived within our means, but we were happy. Camping trips replaced European vacations. Potlucks replaced catered parties. The kids never went without, but they knew money didn't grow on trees. At least I thought they did. I can see now where things began to shift. James got promoted to senior partner when David was in high school. Suddenly, we were more comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable. James wanted to give the kids things he'd never had. Private college funds, new cars for their 16th birthdays, even a European trip for Lisa's graduation. I agreed. Why wouldn't I? We could afford it, and James was so happy to provide. But somewhere along the way, the gratitude stopped. They began expecting rather than appreciating. When Lisa wanted money for a down payment on her first home, she didn't ask. She assumed. When David's startup needed funding, he presented projections and expected a bailout. James provided every time. After James died, it worsened. I was drowning in grief, forgetting to eat, finding myself crying in the garden, at the grocery store, or while grading papers. The children were there, sort of. David called once a week, but the calls grew shorter. Lisa visited monthly, always checking her phone, always with somewhere else to be. They helped with the funeral arrangements. I'll give them that. But during the wake, while people were sharing memories, I overheard them in the kitchen. We need to talk to Mom about the house, David said. She should sell it, move to a condo. The market's hot, Lisa added. We could get at least $800. And I stood in the hallway, holding a tray of coffee, listening to them plan my life around my husband's casket. I said nothing. I told myself they were worried about me, that they didn't want me alone in this big house. But they never asked what I wanted. Over the next 2 years, other things happened. Small things. Money disappeared from our joint account. Lisa borrowed my car for days, kept it for months. Sunday dinners stopped. Only one person showed up consistently, Sophie, my granddaughter, David's daughter from his first marriage. She visited every Saturday, sharing her sketches, asking about me. One Saturday she hesitated, then asked softly, "Grandma, do you ever feel like people only call when they need something?" That question hit harder than I expected. That night, after Sophie left, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair where she had been. Her words echoed in the room. "Do you ever feel like people only call when they need something?" I could almost see James's face, a mixture of pride and sadness, the way he always looked at me when I tried to shield the children from consequences. I remembered something James had left behind when he died. A leather-bound journal he kept hidden in the top drawer of his nightstand. I had avoided it for 3 years, thinking grief wasn't the right time to read about the struggles and frustrations he'd buried inside himself. But that night, curiosity mixed with a kind of determination I hadn't felt since college. I pulled the journal out, the leather soft from years of handling, and opened it to a random page. "I'm tired of being treated like an ATM," his handwriting read. "David and Lisa only call when they need money or favors. I feel invisible, used. Maggie is too kind. She will give until nothing is left of her. I must tell her not to let them bully her after I'm gone." I blinked, feeling a chill run down my spine. He had known. He had seen the pattern. The way our children's love had become transactional, how they measured their affection in gifts and bank withdrawals. And he had begged me, in writing, not to let them continue. The next few days were quiet. I reread the journal, taking notes, highlighting phrases that resonated with me. "Boundaries are not betrayal." James had written, "You owe them guidance, not everything." Every line felt like a blueprint, a roadmap I had ignored for far too long. And yet, there was fear too. Fear of confrontation, fear of being called selfish, fear of being abandoned. I decided to test the waters. 2 days later, I called David. His voicemail picked up. "Hi, Mom. I can't talk right now. Call me later." I didn't leave a message. That evening, I called Lisa. She picked up on the second ring. "Mom, hey, I heard you said no to David." "Yes," I said simply. My hands were shaking, though not from fear. Something else had replaced the usual dread, a clarity I hadn't felt in decades. "Mom, my way. That's between David and me. He's really hurt. And I guess I'm confused. You've always helped us before. Is something wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. I'm just making different choices now." Her voice rose slightly. "Mom, we're busy. We have lives. You can't hold that against us forever." "I'm not holding anything against anyone. I'm simply choosing not to give away money I might need." "Might need for what?" "You live in that huge house all by yourself. Your retired dad left you well off. How would you know what I need?" "You haven't asked about my life in 2 years." I said quietly. "That's not fair, is it?" "Family helps each other!" "That's what Dad would have wanted," she cried. There it was, the invocation of James, the trump card I had heard so many times in my life. But I had something she didn't. I had his words, his journal, his plea. "Your father left me a journal," I said softly. "Did you know that, Lisa? He wrote about how tired he was of being treated like an ATM. How you and David only called when you needed money. He asked me not to let you bully me after he was gone. We never." Her voice was shocked, almost defenseless. "Love," I continued, "is not a word. It's an action, and your actions have been very clear. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I am. I am your mother. And as your mother, I raised you to be independent, capable adults. You don't need my money. You need to learn to manage your own." There was a long silence. I could hear her inhale sharply, as if she were recalibrating her entire understanding of me. "Fine," she said finally, her voice cold. "Don't help your own children. See if we forget this." "I'm sure you won't," I said softly. Then I hung up. And just like that, the quiet settled back over the house. No calls, no texts, no follow-ups. It confirmed something I had suspected for years. When the money stopped, so did the contact. The pattern had been undeniable. Sophie came over the next Saturday, her backpack slung over one shoulder, worried eyes scanning mine. "Grandma, Dad's really mad at you," she said. "He and Amber were talking about how you've changed, how you're being selfish." "Do you think I'm being selfish?" I studied her for a long moment, thinking about every small action she had taken. Every Saturday visit, every sketch she had shown me, every word she spoke that wasn't tied to a request. "No," I said finally. I think you're being smart. Your dad and Aunt Lisa have been using me. I've seen it for years. I just didn't know how to say it. She hugged me tightly, and in that embrace, I felt the first relief in a long time. Someone understood. Someone truly saw me. The following week, I woke up early with a strange sense of anticipation. The silence in the house, usually heavy and oppressive, now felt like space. Room to breathe, room to think, room to decide what I wanted. I brewed a cup of tea, carried it to the living room, and looked out at the city skyline through the tall windows. For the first time in years, it felt like the world was waiting for me. Not for my children, not for anyone else, but for me. I had spent decades putting others first, James, the kids, even friends who only reached out when they needed favors. And now, finally, I was stepping into a life that was mine to shape. I opened my laptop and started researching smaller, manageable condos in town. I had always thought of the house, the big one on Willow Street, as my legacy, as a monument to family. But all it had become was a source of constant tension, proof that love and money were too often confused. By the next morning, I had scheduled appointments with a realtor. She was bubbly, cheerful, the kind of person who seemed to see potential in every corner. "You'll love the new places I have in mind," she said, as we toured 3 different units. One was bright and modern, the other cozy and compact, and the last, had massive windows, sunlight spilling across the floor in the afternoon, a perfect view of the river that wound through the city. I could picture myself there, Sophie visiting, Patricia stopping by for tea, the quiet joy of choosing what belonged to me without compromise. Later that week, I found myself back at James's journal. I flipped through pages, reading his frustrations, his dreams, the little things he loved about life. One entry caught my eye. "Maggie deserves to live her life fully, without guilt for saying no. She has given enough. She deserves joy, laughter, freedom." Tears filled my eyes. It wasn't just guidance he had left, it was permission. Permission to set boundaries, to prioritize myself, to step away from people who treated love like a transaction. I made the calls. David's voicemail again. Lisa picked up. "Mom, we really need to talk," she said, her voice hesitant. "I know you said no to David, but, Mom, please." I took a deep breath, repeating his words silently like a mantra. "You deserve joy. You deserve freedom. I'm not calling about money," I said evenly. "I've made my decisions. They are final." There was a pause, the kind where you could almost feel her reconsidering everything she thought she knew about me. You're serious," she whispered. "Yes, I'm serious, and I'm not apologizing for making choices for myself." I hung up before she could respond further. It felt electric, terrifying, exhilarating, real. I had drawn the line, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. 2 weeks later, the closing on my new condo took place. I watched as the keys changed hands, the money transferred, everything finalized. The house that had been my home, my children's childhood home, was no longer mine. The weight of years lifted from my shoulders. That night, I slept in my new space for the first time. It was smaller, cleaner, easier to manage, and fully mine. No obligations lurking in every corner. No quiet demands waiting behind closed doors. Just sunlight, books, tea, and the gentle hum of life moving forward. Saturday morning, I sent a group text to David and Lisa. I sold the house. Closing was yesterday. I moved into my new place. The address is below if you ever want to visit. Within 30 seconds, my phone rang. "David." "You sold the house without telling us! That was our house!" "How could you not ask us?" I could hear the anger, the shock, the sense of betrayal he was projecting. And I understood it. Not because he was right, he wasn't, but because this was exactly what I had feared, that my independence would anger them. "David," I said calmly, "I sold the house. The money is mine. I've made my decisions. They don't include funding your business or Lisa's remodels." "This is insane! Mom, you're making a huge mistake!" "You need that money for your future?" "My future, not yours. I've made my choices. They are final." A pause. Heavy breathing. "We're your children!" He shouted finally. "Yes," I said softly, and the quiet power in my voice seemed to surprise him. "Which is why this hurts. But it doesn't change anything. I'm not abandoning you. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference." He hung up abruptly. I felt no anger, only a strange sense of peace. The pattern was clear when the money stopped, so did their contact. And for the first time, I didn't mind. That afternoon, Sophie came over. Her backpack was slung over one shoulder, and her smile was wide, cautious but genuine. "Grandma," she said, sitting down beside me. I see it now. I see why you did it. You're not being selfish. You're being smart. You've protected yourself from years of being used. I get it. I hugged her, and in that embrace, I felt the first true warmth in weeks. Someone had seen me, not the ATM, not the provider, not the fixer, but me. The journal had been right, and for the first time in decades, I was listening. The days after moving into my new condo were quieter, yes, but filled with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Each morning I woke up, brewed tea, and opened the blinds to let the sunlight pour in. The space was smaller than the house I had sold, but it fit me perfectly. There were no echoing hallways filled with memories of disappointment, no heavy reminders of unmet expectations. This was mine, mine to shape, mine to fill with laughter, curiosity, and peace. I began to fill the space slowly, intentionally. A small bookshelf here, a comfy reading chair by the window there. I brought in my favorite teacups, the ones James had given me for anniversaries long ago. They felt like tokens of continuity, reminders that life could still be beautiful even when the people I had counted on most chose not to show up. Sophie, true to her word, visited every Saturday. She helped me unpack, rearranged furniture with a keen eye for what would make the space feel welcoming, and always asked about my day. "Grandma, how are you doing?" She'd say, as if the world depended on her knowing. And for the first time in decades, someone actually wanted to know. Not what I could do for them, but how I was. One afternoon, while we were organizing my little library corner, I opened James's old journal again. I found a note tucked between the pages of one entry. "The moments we spend giving, helping, protecting, those are precious, but only when balanced. Maggie, don't let giving become a cage. Live freely, fully." I closed the book and sat quietly, letting the words settle. I realized I had spent so much of my life as a caretaker for others, trying to smooth paths, fix mistakes, provide for needs, that I had almost lost sight of my own life. But now, with Sophie beside me in a space that reflected my choices, I felt free. I also began taking small steps outside the condo. First, it was a walk around the block, then to the community center for art classes, something I had postponed for years. Painting, something I had loved as a girl, but abandoned for practicality, became my refuge. The brush in my hand felt like a tool of reclamation, a way to put pieces of myself back on the canvas of life. Volunteering became another anchor. There was a literacy center downtown that needed help with tutoring and organizing events. I signed up. Each day I spent there reminded me why I had become a teacher in the first place. The excitement of curiosity, the joy of witnessing growth, the small victories that built futures. And Sophie, ever observant, noticed the changes. "Grandma," she said one day while we walked along the river after an art class, "you're different. Happier. Lighter. You're like yourself again." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "It feels that way, doesn't it?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "You're glowing." I laughed softly. The word felt strange on my lips but right. Glowing, like someone finally unburdened, unchained from obligations that had been misinterpreted as love, but the world outside wasn't without echoes of the past. David had not reached out. Lisa's texts were cautious, rare. I didn't mind, not anymore. Their absence, which once stung like a hidden blade, now merely reminded me that relationships weren't owed, they were earned. And Sophie had already earned everything. One day in February, I received an email from the University of Portland. The scholarship fund James and I had established was officially active. $300,000 to support students aspiring to become teachers and accountants. It carried our names, our legacy, but now it was being directed to students who truly needed it. I read the first essay that had come in from a recipient, Maria, a bright young woman whose parents had worked tirelessly as immigrants, who had juggled multiple jobs and responsibilities just to pursue an education. She wrote about hope, about possibility, about someone believing in her when she had felt invisible. I felt a lump in my throat. This was the purpose of giving, the true meaning of legacy. It wasn't about satisfying greed, entitlement, or guilt. It was about nurturing growth, empowering dreams, creating freedom where there had been none. I emailed Maria back and asked if we could meet for coffee. When we sat together in a quiet cafe that March afternoon, I watched her eyes light up as she spoke about her classes, her goals, and her passion for teaching. "Mrs. Chen," she said, "this scholarship isn't just money. It's hope. Someone believing I can do more than just survive. It's that belief that drives me." I nodded, tears threatening to spill, but I held them back. She reminded me of James, of the part of me that had always believed in possibility, in nurturing others, but now in a way that felt balanced and just. Sophie had her own victories that spring. 3 art school acceptances came in, and she agonized over the choice. Each school had something unique to offer, but I let her navigate the decision herself. She chose the California College of the Arts in San Francisco. Watching her pack, deciding what mattered, what to bring and what to leave, I felt a profound sense of pride. She had inherited independence, judgment, and courage. Not money, not a handout, but the tools to shape her own life. The condo was buzzing with life as we packed boxes and sorted supplies. Lisa came too. We didn't rush, didn't argue. We simply organized, laughed over trivial missteps, and shared meals in my tiny kitchen. She seemed tentative at first, but as the days passed, the space softened her too. For the first time, I realized that a family could be chosen, nurtured, and rebuilt, not forced by blood or habit, but by presence, care, and consistency. Sophie had chosen me. Lisa had begun to find her way back. And even David, though still absent, didn't define the boundaries I had set. That year, the first since James's passing, I learned what it truly meant to live for myself, to reclaim time, space, and energy that had long been siphoned away. I could see now that freedom was not selfishness, but survival. Not abandonment, but preservation. And with that, I finally felt ready to face the world on my own terms. Spring was unfolding across Portland, the kind of spring that makes you notice small things. The smell of wet earth, the first blooms of tulips in neighborhood gardens, the sunlight glinting off the Willamette River. It should have felt like celebration, like life moving forward. And in many ways, it did. But there was still an echo of tension that lingered. David hadn't called, not once. And his absence weighed in its own silent way, a reminder that setting boundaries didn't erase old wounds. Lisa, on the other hand, was slowly learning what it meant to meet me where I was. Our coffee meetings had become a routine, a rhythm I hadn't known I needed. No money requests, no subtle guilt, just conversation. She began sharing small details of her life, the frustrations at work, her occasional successes, her fears about the future. And I, in turn, shared mine, the progress in my art. Sophie's triumphs, the stories of the students in the scholarship program. It was slow, careful rebuilding, but for the first time in years it felt mutual. Sophie was thriving. Her art was evolving, her ideas bold, her confidence infectious. I attended her high school graduation in June, a proud spectator in a sea of families, clapping as her name was called. Lisa came, too, sitting beside me. We cheered together, laughed together, even took photos afterward, capturing moments I hadn't thought I'd experience with her again. But David was absent. He'd said work obligations kept him away, but I knew better. His pride, his resentment, and his inability to separate love from entitlement kept him distant. After the ceremony, Sophie pulled us aside. "I'm glad you're both here," she said. Her voice was soft but firm, the voice of a child who understood loyalty and choice. "This matters more than you know. It's about showing up." She looked at Lisa and me, her gaze steady. Showing up is how we build family, even when it's broken. That evening, at a small dinner, just the 3 of us, I realized that family wasn't about legal ties or inheritance. It was about presence, accountability, and shared experience. We talked, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes joyfully, about school, art, and what came next. Lisa admitted she had been wrong, that she had taken me for granted. I didn't dwell on past mistakes. I listened, nodded, and acknowledged her words. The air between us felt lighter, and for the first time, the absence of David didn't feel like failure. It felt like choice. Summer brought new challenges and new joys. Sophie moved into her dorm in San Francisco, and Lisa accompanied us for the weekend. We unpacked her things, organized her room, explored the city, and shared meals. It was chaotic, exhausting, and perfect. I watched them laughing, talking, and seeing the city through Sophie's eyes. There was love in those moments, unconditional and unforced. And Lisa, despite her past behavior, showed genuine warmth and care, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Through it all, I remained firm about the decisions I had made regarding money, the scholarship, and the house. Lisa asked no questions about the inheritance. She respected my boundaries. And it was in that respect that our relationship began to truly heal. She was learning, slowly, that love doesn't always mean access to wealth or control. It can mean showing up, listening, supporting, and being present without expectation. Meanwhile, the scholarship fund continued to touch lives. Maria, the first recipient, had started her teaching classes and had a bright spark I hadn't seen in many years. She visited occasionally, updating me on her progress and sharing stories about her students. Each letter, each coffee visit, reminded me why James and I had made the choice to give away money in a way that mattered. Real change, real hope, and real gratitude. This was a legacy far more meaningful than inheritance could ever be. But the shadow of David's absence remained. His silence was a reminder of the cost of boundaries, that sometimes love requires hard choices, and that not everyone would respond with understanding. I couldn't force him, and I wouldn't try. I had learned that protecting my own peace was not betrayal, it was survival. One Saturday morning, as Sophie and I sat in my sunlit kitchen sipping tea, she said, "Grandma, I think this is what Dad wanted for us all along." I looked at her, puzzled. To show that family isn't just about taking or giving. It's about being there for each other. And you're showing us what that really means. Her words settled over me like a warm blanket. I realized that in choosing to prioritize my own life, I wasn't losing family. I was creating a family that chose me, respected me, and valued presence over possession. That summer, I also took more time for myself. Art classes, book clubs, volunteering museum visits. The world outside my condo became a canvas of experiences waiting to be painted. And with each step, each brushstroke, I felt freer, lighter, and more alive. By August, I had accepted that David might never reconcile, and that was okay. I wasn't doing this to punish him or anyone else. I was doing it for me. The old guilt, the endless trying to please, the feeling that I owed my time, my energy, or my money, those were gone. In their place was something far more valuable: clarity, self-respect, and a life I could claim fully. It was in these moments, surrounded by Sophie's laughter, Lisa's tentative warmth, and the growing independence of my own choices, that I truly understood family isn't just inherited. It's built, nurtured, and sometimes reclaimed. And for the first time, I felt that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Autumn arrived quietly, painting Portland in shades of amber and gold. The mornings were crisp, the evenings long, and there was a certain calm that came with the slowing pace of life. I spent hours in my new condo, arranging art supplies, sorting through books, and journaling thoughts I had ignored for decades. Each page felt like shedding an old skin, acknowledging anger, sadness, and the weight of years spent giving more than I received. Lisa and I had settled into a tentative rhythm. Coffee once a week, occasional lunch, and longer conversations when our schedules allowed. Our talks weren't perfect. They rarely were, but they were honest. She shared her anxieties, her triumphs, and the guilt she had carried since my birthday. I listened, not as a mother handing out lessons, but as a woman who had learned the hard way about boundaries and self-respect. One chilly October morning, Lisa sent a text, "Can we meet?" I feel like I've been avoiding something important. She was hinting at the conversation we both knew needed to happen. The one about the past, the resentments, and the ways we had hurt each other. I replied simply, "Yes, let's meet." We sat in a quiet cafe near my condo. The aroma of coffee filled the air, and outside the leaves tumbled in the wind. Lisa's hands wrapped around her mug as she began. "Mom, I want to really understand. I know I've been selfish. I know I hurt you. And I want to make things right if you'll let me." I studied her for a long moment, remembering the little girl I had raised, the teenager I had hugged through heartbreaks, the adult who had seemed distant and self-absorbed. I saw the sincerity in her eyes, and it softened something in me I hadn't realized was still tense. "Lisa, making things right doesn't mean rewriting the past. It means showing up now, being present, and treating me as a person, not a bank." She nodded, a small tear sliding down her cheek. "I can do that. I want to do that." And so we began slowly and carefully. Conversations that weren't about money, discussions about her work and ambitions, and moments of laughter we hadn't shared in years. There were still silences, moments when old resentment flickered, but we addressed them gently, without blame, acknowledging our shared history while refusing to be defined by it. Sophie continued to be the bridge between us. She had grown into a remarkable young woman, insightful, compassionate, and fiercely loyal. One Saturday, she and Lisa spent hours together, talking about art, college plans, and life's uncertainties. Watching them, I realized that the family I had chosen to nurture was becoming stronger, healthier, and more genuine than I had ever imagined possible. In November, I attended a small gathering at the university for the scholarship recipients. Maria and two other students shared stories about their journeys, struggles, victories, dreams. Hearing their voices, I felt the impact of my choices in a tangible, profound way. The scholarship wasn't just money, it was hope, belief, and the kind of support that could change lives. I thought of David and Lisa and wondered whether they had ever truly understood what real generosity meant. Not giving to gain control, but giving to empower. Christmas approached quietly this year. No long lists of gifts, no tension over expectations. Patricia invited me to her home, and we spent the evening laughing, playing games, and enjoying the warmth of family by choice. Sophie came on Christmas Eve, presenting me with a small painting she had created. It depicted a garden filled with light and color, a quiet tribute to the life we were building together. "This is for you," she said softly. "Because family isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a feeling." Tears pricked my eyes. She understood in ways that others never had. She showed me that love, presence, and kindness were far more enduring than entitlement or obligation. David never reached out. His absence was painful, but it also reinforced what I had come to know: love cannot be forced, and boundaries cannot be broken without consent. I couldn't make him see what he refused to see, and I didn't need to. I had built a life rooted in respect, choice, and authenticity. By New Year's, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in decades. My life was quieter, yes, but it was filled with meaning. Sophie's laughter, Lisa's tentative but genuine presence, the scholarship letters, my art classes, and the friendships I had cultivated, all of it affirmed that the right choices had been made. For the first time in many years, I could truly say that I was enough. Not because of what I had given or sacrificed, but because of who I had become: a woman who valued herself, set boundaries, and chose wisely where her love and energy went. I realized then that my journey was not about punishing my children or withholding love. It was about creating a space where respect, care, and presence mattered more than entitlement, guilt, or expectation. And in that space, I found freedom. Freedom I had not known I could claim, but freedom that, once embraced, made every difficult choice worth it. Winter settled over Portland, bringing quiet nights and frost-tipped mornings. My condo, smaller and easier to manage, felt like home in a way the old house never had. No sprawling hallways, no echoing rooms filled with memories I wasn't ready to face. Just light, warmth, and the freedom to live my life on my own terms. Sophie had begun her first semester at the California College of the Arts. The weekend we helped her move in, Lisa came along, and for the first time, it felt effortless. No tension over expectations, no hidden agendas. We unpacked boxes, arranged her new space, and wandered the city streets sampling pastries and coffee. That evening, as we settled into the tiny couch in her dorm lounge, Sophie handed me a new painting. This one captured 3 women laughing around a table, cups in hand, sunlight streaming in. "That's us," she said, her eyes sparkling. "The family I choose." Lisa looked at it, her voice trembling. "I almost missed this," she whispered. "I almost missed you." But I was here, present, whole, boundaries intact, choices made. That painting, simple yet profound, symbolized the new foundation we were building. A family defined not by past mistakes, but by love, respect, and shared moments. David still hadn't called. I had stopped waiting. Each unanswered phone call was no longer a wound, but a reminder that freedom sometimes comes at a cost. I couldn't control his choices, nor should I have. Life was too short to live in the shadows of disappointment. Instead, I focused on what I could nurture. The students benefiting from the scholarship, Sophie's dreams, friendships cultivated over shared tea and laughter, and my own creative passions. By spring, I had immersed myself in my art classes, finding joy in colors, textures, and the quiet satisfaction of creation. At the Literacy Center, I watched young students struggle, then blossom, and I saw echoes of myself in their determination. Each smile, each breakthrough, was a quiet testament to the power of belief and investment, not in wealth, but in people. Letters from scholarship recipients arrived regularly. Maria had just finished her first semester with excellent grades. She wrote about her aspirations, her challenges, and her gratitude. "This scholarship isn't just financial support," she said. "It's a vote of confidence, a promise that someone believes I can achieve my dreams. That belief changes everything." Her words reminded me why I had made those hard decisions. My life, once defined by appeasing others, now had ripple effects far beyond my own circle. Summer arrived with long days and golden light. Sophie returned home for a visit, carrying stories of new friends, projects, and small victories. She hugged me tightly. "Grandma, I want you to see everything I'm doing. I want you in my life, always, and she was, fully present, unafraid, and loving in a way that reminded me how family could feel when it was chosen and nurtured. Lisa and I continued to rebuild our relationship. Coffee dates, museum visits, long walks, and honest conversations became the rhythm of our bond. We didn't dwell on old mistakes. Instead, we acknowledged them and focused on understanding and connection. I learned to listen without judgment, and she learned to show up without expectation. It wasn't perfect, but it was genuine, and that genuineness was more valuable than any inheritance could ever be. David remained distant, stubborn in his grievances. Some days I felt a pang of sadness, remembering the little boy he had been. Other days, I simply accepted that not everyone chooses the same path. And in that acceptance, I found peace. I had done what I could, set boundaries, make wise choices, and love the people willing to show up. The rest was out of my hands. As my 70th birthday approached, I reflected on the past 2 years. Selling the house, moving into a smaller condo, creating the scholarship, and setting firm boundaries had been daunting. But each choice had led to liberation, self-respect, and a deeper understanding of what family truly meant. I had learned that love isn't about money, obligation, or guilt. It's about presence, care, and respect. That year had taught me that freedom often comes with discomfort, that saying no can be a radical act of self-preservation, and that choosing oneself isn't selfish. It's essential. Sophie's laughter, Lisa's evolving presence, the letters from students, the art I created, and the small joys of daily life reminded me that a life lived authentically, even in solitude or with limited resources, could be rich beyond measure. Sitting on my balcony one evening, watching the city lights shimmer beneath the fading sunset, I felt a profound contentment. I was enough, whole free, no longer a caretaker of entitlement, no longer bound by expectations I hadn't agreed to. My life was my own, filled with people who truly mattered and causes that carried meaning beyond myself. That night, I thought back to my 68th birthday, the table set for 5, the empty chairs, the quiet ache of absence. I realized then that those moments weren't just about betrayal. They were a doorway to freedom. They forced me to choose, to act, to reclaim my life. And in choosing myself, I had discovered a deeper joy, a truer love, and a family built on connection rather than convenience. For the first time in decades, I slept knowing I had made the right choices, not for approval, not for gratitude, but for the lasting peace and fulfillment that comes from living authentically. That night, I finally understood freedom, like love, is something you create, and in creating it, I had found the most precious gift of all.